by alphonic.com.
Hi, Sparkles. This is episode 143 of the Intuitive Wisdom Podcast. Today, I'm sharing my conversation with intuitive life and TI breathwork coach, Diana Annin. There are so many great and memorable points in our conversation. I had trouble picking just one to use as a title. I decided on Journey of a Lifetime. Diana talked about the importance of dropping from your head space to your heart space, and that leading with your heart requires trust. She also shares her story and journey in this lifetime and beautifully illustrates the light that is your essence as a spiritual being, how shame and your physical mind can get in your own way, the bliss of connection within, and the unfolding that happens when you just keep going. Hi, and welcome to Intuitive Wisdom. I am your host, Kay Margaret Solorio. I am an author, spiritual teacher, and certified Angel Reiki Master. I believe that all the answers you seek are inside you. When you learn to discern between the ego and the intuition, tune into spirit, you can hear that whisper, your intuitive wisdom, answering your questions and showing you the next right step. On this podcast, we explore that connection and the good that happens in the world when you learn to hear your intuition, trust your intuitive wisdom, and allow your magic. Quick announcements. My book is now available on Amazon. Yippee! So you can search my name, Kay Margaret Solorio, or the book title, Make Ease Your Vibe, and purchase your copy. It's available in paperback and on Kindle. It's a self-help book with mindset, energy, and time strategies to help bring ease and calm into your daily routine. Cut through the overwhelm and create new habits that make change sustainable. We had amazing sessions this month in March focused on wealth and prosperity, and I am working on the content for our April classes, which will focus on tuning into the divine feminine energies. Check out the website at deliciousease.com/services for details and registration. I've also quietly opened the membership this month if you're ready to take your manifesting journey to the next level. Go to deliciousease.com/manifest. As a member, you get instant access to all my online courses and materials, as well as an all-access pass to live sessions. I've built an extensive library of guided meditations, angel energy healings, and a foundational program that leads you through the steps to become a conscious manifester. This is for you. Again, that's at deliciousease.com/manifest. All right, let's get to the episode. Diana Annin is an intuitive life and TI breathwork coach who empowers humans to reconnect with their true magical selves, attracting more joy and abundance into their lives. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Diana. Hi, Diana. Thank you again for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Kay Margaret?
I am so excited. Well, as you may know, on this podcast, I like to explore the magic that happens when you learn to hear and trust your intuitive wisdom. So I'm curious for you, what does your intuitive wisdom feel like?
Oh, good question. It feels it's a knowingness. It's hard to put words to it, and I know you're an Aber, as they say, because you said something
Abraham
earlier.
Hicks.
A transition, yes, but words don't teach, experience does, and
Yeah,
it's a knowing, and it's the knowing that sort of is always there, and it's a niggling or something. I can remember feeling that way when I was a little girl. And I couldn't put any words to it. Now I can put it, but what I feel is exactly what I remember feeling when I was, age 4 stands out in my mind, but it's just something that I feel in the center of my, my being. So I don't, that's not very descriptive.
no, that's perfect. And I love it because I think that is true. It is something spiritual, which is energetic, which isn't human and verbal. So finding the words, that's why I love asking that question, because we all experience it a little differently and we can all express it a little differently. And maybe someday I'll find the words to say what I'm trying to get out.
It's more of a feeling,
It is. Yeah.
There's something that resonates feels really right in your body like nothing else.
I agree. But sometimes people have get a whisper and hear something or we all kind of have different spots, but I love the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You used a phrase recently that I love and I hadn't heard before, turning your inner light back on. And I often refer to sparkles to think of that inner light. But what does it mean to you to turn your inner light back on?
I know you said sparkles. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I love that. It is, we come to this, I believe, and I'm sure you and your listeners is the same way because we connect on this level, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when we come to this earth, we are so connected, and we're connected to that light within us, that which part of us is non-physical. And we're so connected to it when we're our wee little babies, and yet we lose sight of that. And so because you're not taught that by society. You're not, and most often not, unless your parents are, have had their own personal journey to this path to enlightenment, as I like to call it. They don't know how to help turn it, or keep that light back on. I mean, I love you had sent me something where you talked about there's 3 ways that you can get in touch with it, and it's like there's some of us that we come this way and it never gets turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we don't have an environment where it could help support that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that's just an unknowingness. So not knowing that there's that light that's inside. And then society is not one that really promotes that either. We don't really realize it, especially as for women. I think we notice it more when we hit our, midlife, when our kids are, on their own path, so to speak, or they're not, we don't have to have 24/7 care for them, but we're still there to guide them. And we start to feel like there's got to be something more than this. And I feel like in my own personal experience, and I wasn't able to articulate it, is that my light needs to be turned back on until I started this journey of personal growth, understanding that that's what exactly it kind of felt like to me, because I said it's a knowingness that's always been there, but I tuned it out and it got dampened down by all the negative self-talk and critics that I allowed to influence me.
Well,
And
I would think too, when you're a kid, at least I had this experience, like when you're a kid and you don't understand and there's lots of things happening and you just want to fix everything or you want it to be better, dampening your own light or dimming your own light is probably a better way of saying that,
yeah,
is an easy thing to do because you have control over that. And then it can become a
exactly.
habit.
And you don't even realize that you're doing it, because the main
Right.
thing is, especially when you have, let's say you have siblings, and there's something that the dynamics that are going on either within your home or within your social circles at school or anything like that. And we're all born to care, we are naturally born to care for others, lead from our heart space, our parasympathetic nervous system. And so that's a natural place for us. And so, but we learn from the behaviors that we're surrounded by. And mothers care for others first before they care for themselves. And that's sort of a pattern that we learn and don't even realize it. And so it happens so organically that we don't even realize it sometimes.
Yes. And I think also what you said about society kind of feeding into that notion sometimes that even though that's natural, it kind of sometimes can be taken to the extreme and you forget that taking care of yourself actually takes care of others. Like that feeds
Absolutely.
back, it gets backwards or twisted.
Exactly. Like when you put the oxygen mask on first,
Yes, exactly.
Well, and the other thing
Forget
that I
that.
do believe that's very, very poignant in what happens is that the nonverbal cues that we pick up as children, we're not able to understand. And when we have when we feel like we're taking care of others, because it may be in the environment that we're in, is we're trying to keep ourselves safe. If there's some trauma in the home, or if there's something at school where we just are naturally wanting to take care of somebody else, or if we have to be quiet, if we live in a situation where if we are loud, our parents get mad. And so it comes in so many different ways at us that we don't know how to process as children, that we naturally sort of shrink ourselves in a way, or turn that light down a little bit, because it's how we've interpreted the message. They may not have meant that to us. They may have, but they may not. And it's how we've interpreted it and don't have the words to explain it. So there's so many ways that it can be
Yes.
turned, dimmed.
Yes. I don't know why I was just reminded of a mean thought I had, which is not something I like to admit to, but I once met somebody who was very awkward, but authentically themselves. And I had the thought in my head, oh, you were not made fun of very much as a child. you know? And I was like, that's not a nice thing to think. But like, then it was such a reflection to understand myself. Like, oh, perhaps you were made fun of a little bit too much that you dimmed your light because this person is authentically awkward and good with themselves and you're not there yet.
Right. Right.
It was really
We
funny.
all have our own journeys.
Yeah, that too. I just had that thought earlier this week.
Hmm.
So, in reconnecting with who you truly are, you had mentioned you teach a twofold approach, strengthening your relationship that you have with your physical self and your non-physical self. Can you talk more about this?
Yes. And I love the way you asked that question because I never really looked at it as a twofold, but it really is because at least as I see it, is because we are human. Like I said, spiritual beings having a human experience, we can't ignore the human part of us. And you can't have the physical without the spiritual, but you can't have the spiritual without the physical either. So we're intertwined. But that which part of us is larger is the non-physical aspect of it. But the part of us where we get so stuck in our minds is that physical part of us. And so there's a point where I think we get so tired of hearing that negative self-talk and that inner critic that in order for us to really get reconnected and turn our lights back on, we have to focus on that which part of us is physical, that ego brain or the ego mind, and be able to lay new neural pathways because the beliefs that we have about ourselves cause us to, there's a whole chain of events and I'm forgetting how to articulate it well, but the point is that a belief are just thoughts that we are thinking. And when we think a thought enough and it becomes a belief, then we base our decisions and our actions on those beliefs. And so we believe that we're not good enough. If maybe that was a message that was fed to us in different ways when we were younger, then we don't try and we don't think bigger. We don't dream. We dim our light. And so we have to honor the fact that we work in tandem with the physical part of ourselves, but sometimes we can't even get into that non-physical within our heart space when we're so blocked by the static and the noise that is up in our mind. And so it's important to not only focus on the self-love aspect of it from internally, but also from the mind shift in the physical aspect of ourselves in order to be able to trust to drop into our heart space and get out of our head space and know that what we feel and what we intrinsically know is that we are worthy and we're good just as we are, and perfectly imperfect just as we are. So you can't, it's because we work in tandem, you really can't focus, you have to focus on both. And, I think it's based on your own personal experiences and which one needs the attention first, so to speak, because it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg.
That's a good
But
quote.
I think because it's difficult to get down into that spiritual loving space in your soul when you have so much chatter up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lived in your head space like I did for the majority of my life, it was very difficult for me to drop into my body and into my heart.
That's a really good way of putting it. I also was reminded of a story, and I don't remember the details exactly, but it was something about in history, it used to be like humans used to believe that they couldn't run, what's the 100 meters in less
Oh,
than
and for
10.
like a mile under 4 minutes.
Oh, was it that? Was it a mile
But
under?
I'm sure it was meters too. I mean, there's all different stories like that, but
Right. Well, something like that. There was a belief that they couldn't do it. And then somebody
mhm,
broke the record. And then, like, not a week later, a month later, 5 other people broke the record. It
exactly.
was just
Yeah.
that belief that was held and not the truth.
Well, what is the saying that Ford
Possibility.
says? If you think you can, and if you think you can't.
There you go.
It's a belief is just a thought that we've been thinking, and so that's where it's important to work with that physical part of yourself. And when you start to hear those thoughts in your head, you really need to ask yourself that question: is that really true? What makes that true? And when we start to dig deeper into it, we drop from our head down into our heart. And then, so that's where it's kind of, it goes, it's constantly back and forth. I don't think there's one that's more than the other, it's at least in my experience. But like I said, everybody has their own journey. That's the beauty of this.
Yeah, that's a great point, too. I'm curious then a little bit more about your personal journey. How did you come to learning about this and personal growth and the difference between the spiritual and the physical, and was
Oh, it's been a journey.
it sounds like with what you teach in the inner light that this it wasn't obvious the whole time, so you came to it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's a picture. I can picture this picture of myself in my pajamas in the living room of my house when I was 4, and it's like I knew then, and I knew at that point what the light I was, and I can't find that picture anywhere, but it's blazoned in my mind. So I often think of that little girl when I get away from it. But if I were to, I've been on this earth for almost I'm 61. So I think about the things that have really been pivotal in my life that have affected me. My parents divorced when I was about 5 years old. I was sexually abused by my step grandfather for many years. And then in turn, the way that I handled that was through an eating disorder for 40 plus years of my life. And I knew that there was more to life than that. I've always been a seeker and always known that there was something that was out there that could help me, deal with this unrest that was happening inside. So I would say probably about 18 is when I really became aware of their going deeper. So it's been on a long time, and I suffered through my eating disorder for such a long time. But I look at it now, it was my driver, and I felt like I was so broken and so worthless for so long because I couldn't get over it. And I was searching, and I was trying, and I was doing everything, and going to therapy, and I was in groups, and I went and I got trained in EFT, and I can't tell you all the different things that I've done. And I it I'm just grateful for what it's taught me in this learning. So when I was about 6 or 7, there was this part, and I'm looking back now, so I don't know if I was necessarily that young, but I know I was young, and I remember thinking I wanted to write a book, I wanted to be a psychologist,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to be an interior designer. And so I do interior design.
Hey.
It took me a long time to trust myself to do it, so I've been doing it over the last 10 years, but doing it now, I did it 5 years for a company. Now I do it on the side on my own just for referrals. And then I wanted to be a psychologist, but I didn't want to go back to school. So now I've been a coach. I took a sabbatical. I call it a soul sabbatical. I left the corporate world and did design for about 5 years. And then I left there, and I took these past 3 years and just have allowed myself to get reconnected to who I am. So it's been a long journey, but it's been
Nice.
what I've learned because of it. It's taken me places that I'm so grateful. So about 3 years ago, I found breathwork, and I got trained in, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place.
Oh,
So
that's okay. Keep going. It flows.
I was sitting, I was sitting on my love seat in my favorite spot, and where I like to meditate and relax. And I was looking at a Instagram, and I ran across a post by a woman by the name of Samantha Skelly. I can't remember her last name now. Her company's name is Pause, and it was about breathwork. But I didn't know anything about breathwork. It's you are led. I had a book that I pulled out on the flight home a week prior that I had downloaded into my Kindle, that I was looking for something to read, and I had probably downloaded it 5 years ago. And I I all of a sudden thought, oh, this looks interesting, and it talked about breath work, but it was a completely different kind of breath work. It was just breathing. And then I was scanning on Instagram, and I found this about breath work, and so I went. She had a sample, like a 3-minute sample of breathing, and it was the most amazing experience that I felt in my body, because one of the things that was extremely, I think, pivotal in my healing and really taking this journey of self-development even further was, one of the things I always heard through therapy, I went to therapy for years and years and years, was that um, I had a disconnect between my head and my heart,
Hmm.
and which made sense, based on what I was struggling with my eating disorder, because so it was very interesting. And one of the things that was hugely impactful was somatic work. And breath work is a type of somatic work, it's body work.
Mhm.
And it is a great way to detach from your head and drop into your body. I'm trauma informed in how I've learned how to breathe and how I facilitate breath work is, because you don't want to re-traumatize yourself, but it is such a great way to release um, the trauma that we hold within our bodies, because we hold ourselves, our body keeps the score. It holds all of our memories. And so I did so much cognitive work and so much, EFT and NLP and all the mindset, all that stuff. And it's very helpful and it's good, but there still was this place of heaviness within me. And my therapist that I had been going to for a very long time talked about somatic work and how, one of the reasons why she went down that path to learn how to do it is because she had patients that had great success, but they would come back 5, 10 years later and say, I've been doing really well in this area, but I still feel this heaviness within my body. And so she started doing some different kind of somatic work with me. But then when I found breath work, it was really amazing the effect that it had, and which has taken me and catapulted me into this next level of healing. And it's a form of, meditation, it's guided breath work, but it's a way of helping people just not, you don't have to go back and revisit your trauma. We don't want to revisit that energy anyways, because that's how we keep it alive. And so, my whole path has led me to where I am. And it's been such a transformative situation for me, because even though I was really aware and so much on my path to enlightenment, those before I found breath work, I still felt this heaviness in my body. And I felt like I was still struggling in like white knuckling through my eating disorder. I wasn't participating in the behavior, but I felt like I was, trying to manage it and control it. And until I found breath work and dropped into my body, was I able to really feel the true healing, and to feel and feel the connection, like I talked about before, from my body, dropping out of my head into my body, and then connecting. Now I didn't know not much about the chakra centers, and the energy from the earth below, and the divine love and light from the divine above, and just how it connects us from our root to our crown, the base of our spine to the top of our head.
And
And
now
when
you
we
teach breath work, correct?
Yeah. Oh, I don't, I facilitate breath work. So
Okay.
like a guided meditation, I
Okay.
facilitate it, but so that's, I was being succinct and then I got off course. So I apologize, but it's
No,
just,
it all goes together. And I think
yeah.
it speaks to so much what we were talking about before we even pushed record. We kind of both were like, wait, how did this connection happen? This seems
Hmm.
so easy to talk to you. And I think that is spirit guided, like all the little pieces come together and they just fit, and the universe takes care of that. But
Hmm.
also what an inspiration. One thing I try to tell, and to anyone who's listening, is just to keep going and to try different modalities, because there are so many different healing modalities, and whether it's a different season of your life and something might work or not, or like you said, you've tried so much and then you found breath work and that's what was able to help you release and allow and heal. And
Right.
and that's amazing. And that's what we're all looking for. And we're all different. Like you also said, everyone's journey is different. And so if breath work maybe doesn't work for you, then there's something else. But there's always another something else you could.
Correct. Correct. And you're absolutely right, because there are so many different ones that are out there. So I think what the main point would be is that, don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up if you're on a search and you're seeking. There's something that you're going to find that you're going to connect with that's going to break you wide open, and just keep going. But then once and I'm sure this based on your journey, once you start, it's you never stop, because we never get it
Yes.
wrong and we never get it done. So really, it's
It's
a little
true.
unfair for me to say, but there's certain things they crack you wide open, and then you kind of want to you just want to keep going, because it's like, wow.
Yeah, I really, really despise that image of the onion with the layers, but it unfortunately is true. There's like then another one and another one, and another one. And when you're one thing that I've really enjoyed, sounds a little perverse now that I'm saying it out loud, but is getting brave enough to go to the next layer.
Hmm.
Like feeling feelings that I tucked away for a long time, or healing in a different way, or trying a different healing modality, and understanding what that feels like in my body, feeling that connection is so profound. And then, like you said, we're humans, we're always looking for the next thing. and excited for the next thing. And then for me, it's realizing, oh, look, you're brave enough to tackle what you weren't brave enough to tackle before or experience.
Exactly. And you wouldn't be able to go if you hadn't gone with what you went through before. It leads you to that next step. It makes you feel more
Right.
comfortable to go a little bit deeper, and that's the beauty of it. And then that's where, and everybody's journey is different and everybody's timeline is different.
Oh, amen. Say that 50 million times. Yes.
Exactly, because I think and that to me has to be, there's what slows, I feel like, at least in my experience, and I feel in other people that I've talked to, they've experienced something similar, and maybe you have too, is that, and Brené Brown talks about this, about the shame. It's the shame that holds us back and slows us down. It's like sticking a pencil or a pen or something in the spoke of a wheel on this bike that we're on for our journey, or with this, because we get in our own way, and
Yes.
so, but then that's the beauty of the universe. It's always showing us the path of least resistance. And so if we
Mhm.
just allow ourselves to slow down and listen, and then once you get started, it's maybe someplace somebody's going to just, you dip your toe in, and then it's your foot, then it's up to your
Yeah.
calf, and then it's up to your knee, and that's the fun part about it. It's not necessarily what the end result is. It's just the fact that
Yeah.
you just keep learning more.
Well, and also admitting that you don't know the end result. Like when you can get to a place where, again, another cliche I don't love, but it's about the journey. Once you can get to that place of letting go of the outcome and going, okay,
Right.
well, I don't know what it's going to look like. And that's a good thing because it's going to be even better than something I could imagine. So I'm going to keep my focus here in the present and go from there one step at a time. Yeah, that's a lot.
Right. Trust the process.
And
I would,
trust. Yeah.
yeah. And I would think, because you do guided meditation, I would think that maybe you've had some of your clientele that has needed maybe a little bit more direction time than others, because of you guide them to relax and surrender.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's always amazing. If people are willing to share, I always ask what came up for them at the end, because, like you said, I was just reminded earlier this morning of helping someone, and what came up was grief, and not necessarily, it was grief for losing an outcome. I don't even quite know how to describe that. They had an expectation of how things would go, and I came
mhm,
to an understanding that that's not how it was unfolding, and experiencing and feeling that grief for what could have been, even though they, on the other hand, knew what was coming would be better. So it
mhm,
was this funny spot, and it showed up in different ways. Or when you were speaking earlier, you reminded me of when you were speaking of the shame. For me, shame is often external, it
mhm,
force. And I always didn't understand, for a long time, didn't understand that because I've never really been somebody to compete with others. I've always been in fierce competition with myself.
mhm.
And so, but I've also held myself back incredibly. And it was more the shame of I didn't meet my own expectations and
Right.
letting that go. So it can really show up in different ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. I mean, and usually but you get it both ways from outside yourself, but then when you learn how to shut out the noise, from the outside, from the audience out here, and then you realize now you got to shut out the shame of your own voice,
Yeah.
and that one is, I think, talking about that one is, it's, I hate to use the word harder. I really try to stay away from that word, because we create our own experience based on the words that we use. But it does seem like it's a harder one to tackle, but it's more personal. It's really, so it's not that it's harder to tackle. It just requires more. I think it requires more love and tenderness
Yes.
and a lot of grace.
And a lot of grace. It's also helped me to think of those kind of things as relationships and
Mm,
less as like goals or things to conquer. Like instead of conquering my fear, how can I evolve my relationship with fear where it's a sign that I can use that helps me, or something, a message that I can acknowledge, and less something that kind of takes over the day.
yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think is always the ultimate goal, is that how do I bring myself to a solid footing, stability in my body, groundedness in my body, and so that when I'm connected to my higher power, when I'm connected through my central channel, my inner knowing, nothing can take me off center.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I am responsible, the only person that knows what I need and what I want is me, and the only thing I have control over is me and how I react to whatever's going on around me. And when we take radical responsibility for our life and our emotions, our power can't help but ignite, and our light can't help but come back on, because I'm getting the tingles.
Yay.
We're so connected. We're so connected to, that universal energy that's that's always there with us. I think I remember hearing you say that, we always have our spirit guides around us,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when we're connected to that, you know, it's like, I remember hearing unstoppable, the people using these words unstoppable and in inner power, and not really knowing, thinking, oh, yeah, I know what that is. No, I didn't. They've
Yeah, the
taken
force that
on.
creates worlds is a
Mhm.
different level.
Yeah. Yeah. The bliss that I feel at this state, after a meditation, after doing breath work and meditation and feeling that bliss, it just makes me want to cry with joy every time. And we are the drug. We are our own drug. And I want everybody to feel that and know that. And, you don't need these outside things to make you feel better. It comes from within. But and we know that when we come here. And
Yes.
it's a wonderful thing to be reconnected to it. And
Well,
it sounds woo, but it's really, there's woo, there's a lot of woo to it, but there's a lot of science behind that spirituality too.
yes, there is.
That's a whole nother discussion.
That is a whole nother discussion. I feel like I could talk to you for a very long time.
Me
And
too.
this brought it back around to that inner light. So I'm going to take that as a good stopping point for today, at least.
Yes.
Please tell people where the best places to connect with you and to your work.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm in awe of what you have created here, and I
Yay.
appreciate you inviting me into this space, and it's been a pleasure. And right now, I'm in the process of getting a lot of things together. So the best way to reach me now, because that will stay constant, is my email, which is Diana with one N at AnninFamily.com, ANNIN family.com. And then I also have I have an Instagram at Diana Annin, all one word. And it's terrible. I don't even know what my Facebook. So those are the best two places to reach me.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
And I'll include those in the show notes for the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
again.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Hey, Sparkles. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Intuitive Wisdom Podcast. If you haven't already, click subscribe and follow. And if you love this episode, please leave a review and share it on Instagram and tag me at Delicious Ease. That's DELICIOUSEASE, so that I can say thank you. Every review helps another person find this podcast and learn to welcome their own intuitive wisdom. You can download your free 20-minute guided ideal day meditation on my website, deliciousease.com. Again, that's DELICIOUSEASE.com. And have you bought my book yet? Now available on Amazon, be sure to find my book, Make Ease Your Vibe, for mindset, energy, and time strategies that help you raise your vibration and enjoy the life you live. See you next week.